Bienvenidos a una edición más de Diálogos Sensoriales en la modalidad itinerante. Tengo el enorme placer, de hecho estoy nervioso, de platicar con Suzanne Pecore. Ella ha trabajado en el campo de evaluación sensorial durante más de 40 años. Tiene un Master Science en Ciencia y Tecnología de Alimentos en la Universidad de Davis, en California, donde se especializó en sensorial y tomó clases con Rose Marie Pangborn, quien fue pionera en el campo sensorial. Suzanne ha trabajado como investigadora en varios países y compañías como McKesson Contract Research en Dublin y en California, de NutraSweet Company en Chicago, en Illinois, en General Mills, en Minneapolis, en Minnesota directamente, y de forma remota desde Pasadena, California. Y recientemente se desenvuelve como consultor independiente. También ha sido profesora invitada en algunas universidades, una actividad que disfrutó muchísimo. Es participante activa en muchas organizaciones profesionales como la ASTM, el Society of Sensory Professionals, el IFT y symposiums de Pangborn, que ya le preguntaremos su paso por Pangborn. Ella actualmente está jubilada y junto con su esposo Fred, pues viven en Washington, D.C., principalmente para estar cerca de su hija y de sus nietos. Su trabajo favorito actualmente, por supuesto, es ser abuela. Ella disfruta los pasatiempos de las manualidades como tejer, hacer cestas. De hecho, se dedicó el verano para hacer un remo laminado para canoa, ¿no? Le encanta la naturaleza, el jardín, aunque, bueno, ahora está un poco limitada por la cuestión del espacio en departamento y, bueno, está enfocado en macetas. Es tan activa que está esperando ya con ansia su próxima actividad, que, bueno, no sabe cuál es, pero la está esperando ya conscientemente. Y Suzanne, thank you very much for taking this time to share with us a bit of your sensory experience. And I really enjoyed your description of a sensory life. So thank you so much for this participation.
You're welcome.
So let's start a little bit with some general questions. I think the main question is, how did you arrive to sensory? When was your first time doing sensory?
Yeah, that's always the big question, right? First I had to find food science before I found sensory. But I was in the nutrition program at the University of California, Davis, and one of the classes I took, Pangborn was a guest speaker. And so she came in and talked about, sensory evaluation. It was fascinating. And she was a great lecturer, of course. So when I was finishing my degree, I really, some of my most enjoyable classes were those in food science. And so I decided to switch majors to get my master's degree. And at that point, I was looking for a project, and Pangborn took me on. So that was great. So I really enjoyed working with her. And it just started, it's a fascinating field, right? It's one where you can combine talking to people, working with data, working with food. I mean, what's not to like about sensory? So yeah, I just really fell in love with it in college. And so my first job was with Foremost, or I guess at the time, it was called Foremost Foods Company, went through several name changes, but at the end of the day, it was McKesson Contract Research, and we were doing mostly research for other companies, so consultancy type projects. And that was fine, but yeah, I enjoyed that, and I had great mentors there.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that's, I have plenty of questions, but let's be patient with that. And how was taking class with Rosemary, with Rosemary Pangborn? I mean, did she really ask people to spread the sensory world, sensory to the world? I mean,
she was very. I don't know if she's focused it that way. She was a very demanding instructor. She really expected a lot of her students, and we really stepped up and really tried to do well for her. I think her big goal was to have students get their PhD so that they could become educators themselves at a university. That she really wanted. I think that was one reason that the scholarship was set up, because she really wanted to encourage people to take it on as, furthering the sensory field through more education in other universities. She was such a pioneer that there weren't very many other educators at that point. And
Right.
yeah, so and her students were in demand. So yeah, they were at the time I went through. Yeah.
Which was your most difficult task at that time? I mean, the statistics, learning the methodology, dealing with the panel.
Good question. So you're talking about in school under Pangborn.
Right.
I think my most difficult task was taking her exams, to be honest.
Okay.
Because she expected you to think very quickly. It was a lot of material on the exam, and we had a lot of it was lifted from the literature. So she was very much into critical thinking, where you had to read like their methodology off a journal article and critique it. And you had to be very, very fast at that. And that I struggled with. But as far as the other work, the labs where I had time to really think about it and analyze the data and write the reports, I did very well in those, and I enjoyed that a lot. But having to think quick on my feet on those exams was difficult. Yeah.
And what, in your opinion, how sensory changed your life? I mean, if you are aware of that, do you think your life would be different without sensory at this point?
So are you talking about sensory as a career, or
as a career? I mean, or at the time you start to deal with sensory science, in fact.
Yeah, I think it was, for one thing, it was finding something I had some passion for. When you're kind of investigating in college, trying to figure out what you're going to do with your life, and it just felt like such a fit. So that was, I think, helpful for me, because I was struggling at that point to figure out what I was going to do and what my career might be. And I think the career itself has just, because we're a small community of sensory people in general, in the world of, the industry or jobs, you become very close to people, and it's a global one. And so it really allowed me, I think, to be exposed and get to know people from around the globe. I'm not sure if any other career would have given me as much opportunity as sensory has.
Okay. Yeah, it's a small, in fact, yes.
I'm not sure that's what you wanted for my answer.
No, it's fine. Because normally we as a sensory people, I know many people who start like, I don't know, dinner or meal, and they start to describe everything. But normally I do not do that. I just block myself to, I like it or not.
Yeah, more of a consumer. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I got this from Gail Seville, but it was like, people ask me that a lot. It must be either difficult to eat because you're always thinking about the food, or you must have such a talent to separate out the food. But I it's a difference between eating and tasting, right? Eating is what you're describing. I'm just there to eat and enjoy it, and whether I like it or not. But if there's something you really want to understand about this, like what's in this, then you kind of click it in and you start, analyzing it more. But people assume when we're in sensory that we somehow have above average acuity, that we're somehow better able to, and that's not true. We mostly have normal acuity.
Right. Yes.
We've learned some words and we've practiced a lot, but I can't say I'm the best taster in the world.
Oh, fine. What about your classes? I mean, you are as an invited professor. You do sensory teaching, and
I have, yeah. I did a lot of guest lectures where I'd go in and talk to a class either about my career or a lot of times I would go up to Davis and talk about temporal methods, which I really focused on during my NutraSweet career. So I would use that as, they would often ask me to come and speak about that. But then toward the latter part of my working career, I had the opportunity to go to Dublin, Ireland, and give a summer school for two years in a row, and it was like a full course, but within like 2 weeks. I mean, I had to give like 15 lectures. You know, it was amazing, and do labs and everything else. So it was great. It was a college class. It was, but it was a group of international students. It was amazing. All around the globe, these people would attend, and that was great. I loved it. The other one I did was I stepped in for a professor at Cal State University, LA, who was going on maternity leave, and she taught a sensory class. So I went in and was the visiting professor for that semester. And to be honest, I really enjoyed those two experiences. I loved it. I love teaching students. They're great.
And how is your mood? Are you tough? Are you like, okay, let's keep things calm? What's your style of teaching sensory?
I think one of, I have so much I want to share with people. So I have a lot of material to go through, but I think the advantage I have is I've worked in industry so long, so I can just bring in so many examples, and that helps to keep the students motivated and interested, you know, because if I can kind of see them lagging a little bit, then I'll try and remember some story from my years as a, you know, a sensory scientist to bring it to life.
And do you remember, I don't know, maybe the hardest task you have from trying to do sensory? Maybe some people who didn't believe in sensory, or they do not trust the results, for instance. Do you have something like that? Or
I think you've hit upon the one thing that's always been the hardest for me, is the fact that I have to sell sensory while I'm working in a company, because it's still relatively new to a lot of people. So if you go into a company that's never really had a sensory program, you know what? I'm going to take that back. I'm going to say, a lot of times when you go to a company that's never had sensory, it's almost the easiest sell in the world, because they know they need sensory, so they brought you in, and they've never experienced results that you can bring them. Even just a simple triangle test will totally amaze them, right? Versus going into an established company like I did with General Mills. I think I had the most difficult times sometimes there, even though it was later in my career, because they had very tried and true methods that were very resistant to change. So if, you know, something new was coming in, or we wanted to do it in a different way, it was very hard to convince people to change, you know.
Yes. And do you say that, or how different is sensory? I don't know, at your first time when selling sensory to your first company, for instance, up to now, or compared to now, is different? Do you think people is more concerned about the sensory benefits or not?
That's a tough question. I think you know, honestly, I think the issues have remained the same. I mean, it's always a matter of, it just depends on where the company is at that point in time, in a way, and how much support they're putting behind it. If you've got somebody in management that's supportive of sensory, whether it was early in my career or late in my career, it made it so much easier, you know, to sell it in. I think it's almost, but whether it's changed over time, the basics are the basics. whether you're going to talk about a product being different, or how is it different, or do people like it or not. Those are the three big buckets that don't really change. Yes, there are some new techniques and new approaches out there, but I don't think the people that are hiring you necessarily know that they want maybe some different or new approach. I don't think that has changed at all. It's a small. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that people don't know sensory, and they're not up on the latest techniques. So they're not going to be asking for, you need to be providing me XYZ that I've heard about. No, they just want you to provide them the best sensory support that you can, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, at the beginning, they trust you, right? And then you can share with them more new techniques, for instance.
I think, and I think that's the biggest issue, is developing that trust. So, they have to be convinced sometimes when you move in to a new situation. So it's a matter of showing them what sensory can provide to you, and giving them some good data. I've always based my career on doing really good technical work. I'm not as strong in like the marketing side, or the marketing meaning the selling of sensory, but once they start seeing the great work that you can do, then they start totally trusting you, and they'll say, oh, for example, it's Suzanne on that project, then I don't have any worries. Suzanne's going to design a good test. That's the kind of, place you get to at some point. So, yeah.
Yes. Okay. And let's move a little bit for Pangborn Symposium.
Yes.
You were there, I guess, since the very beginning, right? To the first Pangborn.
I've gone to every Pangborn. Yes, that's my claim to fame.
Well, congratulations for that. It's wow. I think it's amazing to see the people. How was that? I mean, the first one was like a few people, and afterwards the increase. How was that? Please describe that if possible.
Yeah, the very first one was in Finland, and Haley Turla had set it up, and it was outside. It was a bus ride outside of Helsinki, and it was like a retreat, so they had like very small dorm type rooms, and it was kind of like you're there by yourself, and it was about 250 people, which they were totally amazed that many people came. And there were quite a few of us that came from the US, mostly Europeans, obviously, given the location. And there was only one track, there was just, everyone went to all the same sessions. And it was just, and they had great stories about Pangborn in the evenings, because, University of Helsinki gave her PhD. So they gave her an honorary doctorate. And so they had some wonderful stories about Pangborn. So that was fun. And I do have one funny story from Finland, though. I have to I always tell people this story, because the Finnish language has words about this long, they're really long and you can't pronounce them. But there was one phone booth. This is 1992, right? So there's no cell phones or, internet or anything. So you go into this phone booth that had some English directions. So it was one phone booth that you could call for a taxi, or you could, call out. And so you go into this little booth, and they said, if you need to call a taxi, this is in English, tell them to come to, and then they had this word about this long, and I'm going, there's no way I could call a taxi because I can't pronounce that word. But it was pretty isolated, but it was really, really wonderful. You get really close to people. So it was good.
And it was like very formal or very strict, or how
no, I wouldn't say formal. No, I don't think, I mean, it was still a conference, but I didn't feel like it's that much different than conferences today in terms of, and there were so few of us that I think a lot of us knew each other or knew of each other,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember talking with Linda Bartoshuk, and she was someone I'd looked up to and I hadn't spent a lot of time with. And so that was nice to see people that you knew that were really well known in the field. They actually attended. And so you could kind of, that's a good point. It was small enough that you could interact with all of these people. Because by the time we hit 2007, yes, 2007, I co-chaired it with Zeta Vicker in Minneapolis. And that was like one of our high peaks. I think we hit over 1,000 at that meeting, and that was the first time. So I think it was the 7th Pangborn at that point. So that's how fast it had grown. It was just growing by leaps and bounds each year. And at that point, you're not. It's harder to have those intimate, smaller conversations. It's also harder to approach maybe these big names because they're sitting there talking to their colleagues, and you're kind of the younger person trying to come up and talk to them. And so that's a downsize of the size of Pangborn, I think.
Yes,
I don't know how you feel, going to Pangborn.
I agree with that. Well, I prefer the ones in person, and it's difficult to meet the higher people, let's say. Because you are like amazed. I mean, you don't believe that the outdoor is over there, and you can. What can I say to them? I mean, should I say hello, or can you sign my book, please? I don't know. It's difficult for a student or for a new person in sensory to reach you. And how is for you? Because I'm pretty sure when somebody tries to reach you, right?
Yes.
And do you make them a little bit more comfortable with that? I don't know.
I do. I really like to reach out to new people. And like I said, I love students and young scientists. And it kind of came from Pangborn as well, in that I recall when I was at NutraSweet, I had the opportunity to go to a sweetener conference in Switzerland, and Pangborn was a speaker at that one. So of course I knew her because she was my major professor.
Right.
But she literally, and I recall this, she literally took time from all these people clamoring around her. It wasn't that big a conference, but they still wanted to chat with her. And she kind of excused herself and purposely came and sat with me, her former student. And that was so impressive to me that, she would take the time to be with her student or, a young scientist, because she was really an educator. She really wanted to see her students succeed. And that was great. She was, she had good things to say about what I'd been doing. And it just gives you so much confidence, to hear someone give you feedback like that, because she can talk to those colleagues anytime, right? But it was like her one opportunity to meet with a student, and she took that opportunity. So I kind of take that to heart. I always try and make them feel comfortable and no questions. Yeah, I'd love to answer your questions, kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. It's like an investment, right? Because it's people who can work later with you. I mean, it's
absolutely. And you want to see the field succeed as well. You want it's still young enough that you want to see it grow and see it, flourish. And the way you're going to do that is with your future scientists. So there was something I was also thinking about when you were talking about that. For me too, I have to say, the Pangborn conference was really my earliest opportunities to meet more of these global, scientists in the field, or global professors. It's a lot of academics, attend Pangborn. And my first years there as well, I maybe didn't go up to meet as many people as I should have, but it took me a while to develop some ties to those my global counterparts, just because I think a lot of times when you go to a conference, you tend to kind of hang together with your cohort or people because it is an opportunity to see them, obviously. But I would encourage, your audience to just force yourself to go out, introduce yourself to some of these people. And a lot of times they love to hear from people that respect them. You know, they're kind of honored by that respect. So I would say give it a try. You know, if go and talk to them. You know, I'm sure they'd be happy to. Honestly.
Yes, take that meal opportunity or the after party, because at that time you can talk with everybody. I mean,
yes, socializing. That's what we miss with these virtual conferences. Yeah.
I was about to ask you about this last Pangborn. How do you feel, or what are your feelings about this internet or symposium online? Was it fine for you? Did you enjoy it or not?
You know, I actually thought it came across better than I had expected. You know, I was thinking it would feel very, I don't know, cold isn't the right word, but, you know, just like you're not really engaged in it. But I think the way the chats were set up, and, you know, you had opportunities to do little breakout rooms, and, you know, they did their best. And I think, I think you could take an opportunity to kind of reach out to some people. And I thought the content was good, actually. And I do believe we had one of the highest participations of students ever, which was fantastic. So that was nice. Yes. And I think it's because it was virtual and they could take advantage of that.
Yep. Yeah, but it's easier and cheaper because I don't need to pay for hosting or traveling.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think for like countries, like maybe we had more from the African continent, just because, you know, of the travel restrictions and things like that.
Yeah. Speaking about this, how easy is or hard is to do sensory at this time during the pandemic in your side? I mean, it's quite simple. Did you have like challenges that I don't know, that difficulty, the task, or those you defeated?
I haven't done sensory. In the last 5, I'm retired, so
totally okay.
Yeah, totally retired. Yeah, I mean, and I don't want to pretend to speak for all of them. They, you know, we just had ASTM this week, and a lot of them were talking about things they were trying to do, you know, virtually, and working with descriptive panelists in their home, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, people were getting very, very creative, but I fortunately was not in that position where I had to do sensory in this pandemic.
Right, but you participate a lot in these communities like ASTM.
Yes.
Why are you taking your time into that direction?
I mean, I think it's because I have all this experience that I can bring to bear, and the latter part of my career and after I retired, I tried to focus on, you know, helping the field, helping younger scientists, that kind of thing. And ASTM is really one where it kind of does both. You're really working on, you know, writing up documents, writing up methods and standards that you can bring all of your experience to bear to make sure, you know, it's documented well. And also there's young members that come in, and so you can help them and mentor them within the ASTM community, for example, on how to move these documents forward. So I don't know, it gives me a lot of satisfaction to be able to do that for the field. Although I have to say, I think this is my last year or two, and I'm kind of finishing out now. I'm probably not going to attend anymore, but yeah, I find, to be honest, that, you know, as I start listening to some of the talks, I'm just not as interested. You know, I'm not applying anything, so I'm not even keeping up anymore with all the new things that are happening. So it's time.
Well, you will have more time with your family, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Good. Okay, we arrive at the point of the interview where I will ask you a series of comparative questions, something like 3FC.
Okay.
There is no possibility to make ties, and so let's start.
It's a forced choice.
It's a forced choice question, of course.
Okay.
So, well, if possible, right? So, triangle or tetrad testing?
Tetrad.
Traditional descriptive analysis or rapid methods?
Traditional.
Salsa or disco for dancing?
Ugh. I hate disco, so I'll say salsa.
Okay. Red wine or beer?
Red wine.
Preference mapping or PLS?
I guess preference mapping.
Muffins or pie?
Pie.
Strawberry pie. Sunny or rainy days?
Sunny.
Analytical or consumer testing?
Analytical.
Thank you.
So do you have a program going that you're putting my data into?
It's kind of we are like curious about things of this triangle or preference mapping. So it's like everybody's asking those, and the others are like trying to do something with data. So we will see. We will share you the results later.
Okay. I was thinking, well, then it's going to start, maybe you're focused on the person, and you're going to try and cluster me with people like me or something.
No. It's, well, at the end, we can do something with these technical questions, but the other ones are like more personal.
Sure. Yeah.
So, well, what is your expectation? I know you will be retired, but what is your expectation of sensory science for the future? What do you think it will come or expect we can expect from the future?
That's always a difficult question. I think there's a much stronger consumer voice today that we have to listen to, and because a lot of it is we have so many avenues to gather that information. There's artificial intelligence, or there's all these devices like Alexa that you can use to gather data, but also they feel very free to let you know through social media or whatever means what they're thinking about it. So I think the consumer input has exploded. As far as the analytical side, I think we're seeing the pendulum swing to these rapid methods and kind of going away from maybe some of the traditional descriptive and in-house panels that we all depended on in these big food departments that we used to work for. And it's trying to integrate all that into maybe not so many siloed methods. You know what I mean? We're kind of crossing boundaries. Mm-hmm. So I think that's good in a way, but I also feel like we need to hold to the basics. We need, like I was talking about, there's some key questions that you answer with our methodology that really hasn't changed. It's just maybe we approach it differently. We've all gone to kind of tetrad versus triangle, that kind of thing. The other thing that's interesting to me, speaking of a pendulum swinging, is when I started doing some consulting, a lot of it was for these small entrepreneurial companies that don't have their own internal departments, obviously. And I found in trying to get them to do some sensory, I kind of went back to what we had at the beginning of my career, which was an in-house descriptive panel in a way. I would train them on a specific product, obviously, but having to use employees because you're not going to go out and hire in your own descriptive panel, or you don't have the money to kind of pay someone to do that for you on a regular basis. So kind of starting the seed of an internal sensory department in a way, which it seems to me like full circle, because we all started with internal panels. But again, it's kind of the basics,
Yeah, don't lose the basics. I mean, because we have many new technologies or techniques, and consumer. But don't forget the basic, don't forget the structure of sensory, right?
Yeah. And I think the other thing we always have to struggle with in companies throughout my career was like, what's the next shiny thing out there? You know, and I want one of those. I remember when we first were doing PCAs and doing maps, and we had brought it into General Mills, and we kind of had to sell it in, and then it became a very popular methodology, right? And everyone loved these maps that we were creating, right? And so I just distinctly remember that a colleague over in marketing research, and we'd done a descriptive panel with 5 samples, and she said, "Aren't you going to do a map for me?" I don't think you need a map to tell you these differences, but she wanted that on her project, you know, because I did, you know, I had this really cool map within my project, you know.
Yes, wow. And now it's easy to do maps, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes the maps, as you just mentioned, it's not well, they do not provide more information other than the same that is on the mean table.
Right. Yeah. I mean, presentation of data is really important, particularly when you're trying to share results. And I'm a firm believer of lots of plots and things like that. But I think sometimes we need to think about what method we're going to use or what analysis we're going to use, and don't just use it because that's what you've always done, or because that's the way, you know, the latest thing to do, like we were talking about. What am I trying to say here? You have to use the appropriate method or the appropriate analysis that fits the project and fits the objective. You know, we all talk about that. You need to start with the objective. And I think sometimes we forget that. We kind of just design it the same way, run it the same way all the time, when it isn't necessarily what you need. I do remember a project where in the world of temporal methods, you know, we worked with a supplier, and the supplier had done TDS, and we had done our technique called TOS, which is temporal order sensations. And we had developed that specifically for a very specific need, because nothing else out there, you know, fit the bill. So, but you only use it in certain instances. So we had all this data. We had descriptive profiles from both companies. We had TDS from them. We had TOS from ours. We presented all this data. And at the end, the flavorist said, "What does it all mean?" It's like, it wasn't providing any direction. Yes, it was definitely defining differences, but were they important? It made me stop and think, yeah, why did we do all of that? You know what I mean?
Yes. A lot of time, a lot of effort, and
yeah. So at that point, I'm going, we didn't help that flavorist one bit. You know, he had no clue what to do.
Wow. Okay. I know every stage of sensory has its own importance, but which do you think is the hardest one? The methodology part or the statistical part? Well, or the reporting part?
For me personally, or for the field?
No, for you.
I'm not a statistician. I have a total appreciation for statistics. And I didn't grow up with, you know, PCs on my desktop, right? I mean, we were punching cards in a basement, you know, going through a big, huge mainframe. So that was just to run an analysis of variance, you know what I mean? So it's been hard for me to understand all of the statistics and keep up with it. So I've really appreciated having a really good statistician on my staff. I can't overemphasize that. And methodology-wise, I still, to this day, get hung up on Thurstonian scaling and D prime. I was like, oh, but I think, I mean, in all aspects, I love designing tests. That's my favorite thing, is designing a really cool test, you know, to answer a question. And I've gotten to enjoy reporting now, because I can do all these cool plots, you know, on my own. But when I started out, I hated writing. I just hated that writing. So. I would probably have more journal articles under my belt if I had liked writing, but I don't. So I would say that's something, I don't know if I can talk about generically across people, but personally, I think, especially working for a really big company, you have to learn how to communicate data and well, and you have to know your audience. So I'm not sure how that applies to a conference, but I think it's not so much that you're, like dumbing down the data, or just making it simplistic. It's just that you have to be better able to communicate it or, make it understandable for people. At a conference, when you're with your colleagues, you should be able to, keep the technical level pretty high. You can put in, complicated plots, that kind of thing, but you have to be able to still, and I don't think that's really changed. What are the key conclusions? What are your key findings?
Mm-hmm.
But I know when I was at General Mills, we worked really hard to change up our reporting. When you first go out of college, everything you write up is like a journal article, right? You
Right.
always have the introduction, you have the samples and methods, and then you have the results, and then you finally at the end of the day, you get to conclusions, right? You just have to kind of swap that up when you're talking to people in your company that aren't technical people. You got to put those key findings like right up front. What did you learn? It's hard sometimes because you want to share how you did this fantastic study and give them all the details, but you can only give them enough to just make them understand what you did, and then you need to be done. Just put it in the appendix. They don't care. So,
Right.
I've written so much stuff in my companies that no one will ever read. They'll never read it. It'll never get read.
Wow. So you can.
I mean, it's all the information behind the key findings. Who would read it? I mean, maybe they would try and replicate it, but it's not even something like in literature where academics want to replicate what you did to study the method. It's, yeah. Anyway.
It's like the B-sides, no?
Yeah, it is. And I'm okay with that, because I felt very compelled to document everything. I'm a perfect candidate for ASTM because we document, right? But
Right.
At the end of the day, I had to kind of let go of some of that detail just because it wasn't important, and it wasn't like it was going to jeopardize any of the data or the results. It wasn't,
Mm-hmm. Understood. Do you have a favorite paper you wrote, or some? I mean, something that for you was like very satisfying, or the very first published or something. Do you have something like that?
Good question. I think one I was very satisfied with, and actually, I think Tom Carr was the key author, the statistician at NutraSweet. And it was a chapter in a book, and it was called, I don't know the exact title, but it was something along the lines of Methods of Sweetener Evaluation. And it was all that we had pulled together over the years at NutraSweet to understand sweeteners relative to sucrose. And it just kind of walked through everything you should think about in evaluating a new sweetener. And it's pretty old now, but it got kind of, it was a chapter in a book, so it kind of got lost in there. But I've often pulled that out because it really talks about, you need to think about the temporal properties. Yes, you need to think about the potency. You need to think about sweetness synergy. You need to think about off notes. It was all the key things that you would think about in evaluate that are still relevant today, even in the world of stevias and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But so I quite like that paper. That was one I kind of point to a lot. Yeah. But no one ever sees it because it's in a book. You know what I mean?
Yes. Well, let's try to find that book then. Do you have a favorite area of field area? I mean, to work in sensory during these years, like I don't know, maybe cosmetics or food, seafood, wine. I don't know.
Well, my most favorite job was working at NutraSweet, working on sweeteners. And so I kind of like working on ingredient level information. Like I've worked a lot on like reduced sodium was another field I ended up kind of spending time on. And I quite like those because one, they're very analytical and it's really trying to understand perception versus understanding consumer liking. You know what I mean? It was more about,
Right.
And there's such a clear goal. Sucrose is always the goal, you know, or sodium chloride is the salt goal, you know, and so you want to do a lot of matching and understand what's different about it. How can we influence that and change that? And you do get into what's important to the consumer, what's not important to the consumer. So a lot of the methods that I've worked on over the years have been related to working on those basic taste ingredients, or taste, sweet and salt, that kind of thing.
And, okay. And if it were possible, what do you tell Suzanne for the past to do before entering the first time in a sensory class?
What would you tell myself of the past? What to do entering like Pangborn sensory class for the first time?
What a story or some hint or something like that?
Oh my gosh. That's a hard question. I don't know what I would say. I mean, I don't know what I would do differently in her class. You know what I'm saying? I think, I don't know. I suppose devoting as much time as I could to, okay, maybe one thing would be, like I said, really paying attention to the statistics, you know, that you were trying to learn and really go deeper in understanding that. I don't know.
Okay. And well, do you have like, well, the people who see us also is new sensory people. So do you have a sensory book or poster paper to share to that people who is just entering into sensory? Do you have a suggestion?
Yeah. You know, there's one really old article from, I think, Food Technology, and it was written by the Sensory Evaluation Committee of IFT. And I think it's from 1981, I want to say. But, you know, people like Pangborn are on that committee, and they wrote up it's only about 3 or 4 pages. And I can send you later the link, the reference if you want. But it's really a great summary of, you know, the classification of sensory methods, what each method can provide to you. And when I looked at it again just a few years ago, I realized how complete it was, and even relevant today in modern times, you know, for the kinds of questions you can answer. And I've always pulled that into my classes because I think this is just really a nice and short and sweet way to look at it. The other book I really, really like, and this is probably not one, I don't know if it'd be one for someone right into sensory, but is Hildegard's and, Dr. Heyman's and Dr. Lawless's sensory evaluation book. What's it called? I have it right there. Sensory Evaluation of Food. It's my favorite textbook. And the reason it is for me is because they really provide a lot of background and references behind a lot of methodology or scaling or whatever. They were really good at, you know, finding the primary research or sources for a lot of this stuff, and explains it well. And we'll also say things like, all of these methods are all quite similar. They group them together, and these are their basic differences. So I guess what I'm saying, it gives you a lot of the background and the underlying theory behind a lot of these methods. And I believe that's important in trying to help you select a method or even investigate a new method. If you understand the underlying structure or theory behind it, it's very, very useful, I find.
Right. And if they were decide for one symposium the very first time, which symposium do you recommend to attend in order to get more link to the sensory people, to learn more about general stuff,
Yeah.
if there is one?
Yeah. They're all kind of unique. I mean, SSP obviously is kind of has a dual focus. They focus on building the career as also building the science. So, you know, looking about the science and the scientist. So if you're just first starting out, some of their efforts to grow you as a professional or help you in your career, that could be very useful as a new sensory scientist. For me, I prefer more science to my conference, more new methods and things. So I particularly like Pangborn, or kind of the smaller version of it is Eurosense. You know, it's kind of a more manageable size. Those might, well, I don't know. There's also, you know, the sensory division of IFT. So if you're going for other food related things, that can also be a possibility. And ASTM is very unique. So I don't recommend it for everybody. But the positive of ASTM is it's so small that you get really to work with some really nice people. And it's a really open, friendly organization. We really embrace our new scientists that join us.
Right. And almost for ending, do you have like a great moment on your sensory career that can be shared with us? I know there's plenty of them. just one that like this is something every time I remember that a smile came to my face, for example.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of moments that kind of related, and it's that thing about that encouragement from, you know, a younger scientist or whatever. But one was, I already mentioned, was Pangborn seeking me out at that conference in Switzerland, pulling me aside, and she made some sort of comment, essentially saying, "You're doing a good job." You know, she had followed my career, and it was just like, I was just glowing, you know, after that, because, you know, to have her say that to me was like, oh, okay. But kind of the flip side, and I remember when I was first going out, I would be, oh gosh, what would Pangborn do? You know, it was always in the back of my mind, what would Pangborn do in this situation? You know, how would she design this thing? So it was kind of like under that, I don't know, not the fear, but it was like I wanted to do well for her, and almost, you know, wanted to do a good job. And then I had someone come up to me at a Pangborn meeting just a few years ago. I think it was in Scotland. And it's somebody that was one of my scientists at General Mills that reported to me. And he'd only worked for me a couple of years before he left, you know. So, and I hadn't seen him in years. And he said the exact same thing to me. He said, I keep telling myself, what would Suzanne do? You know, and I'm going, oh my God, I'm going, this is like deja vu. It's just like, but it just like, I go, wow, you know, yes, we're carrying on the legacy of Pangborn. We're doing, you know, it's a good thing. So it just makes me feel really good when I hear that. So
how satisfying is that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You don't know. I guess I'm saying you don't know what influence you have on people sometimes.
Right.
And so you always want that to be a good influence.
Good. I'm pretty sure you are doing well a great job for that. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences and your time. Something that is very appreciated lately. I mean, thank you so much. It has been an honor to share this interview with you. And anything else you would like to add?
Oh, I don't think so.
Do you have any contact that you would like to share, like LinkedIn or something like that? We can.
I'm in LinkedIn. I'm also I mean, feel free to share my email. It's fine. It's solely my work email. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Suzanne. It's really thank you so much. And
You're welcome. You're welcome. It was fun, actually. So.
Oh, great. Did you enjoy it?
I do. Yeah. And I love talking about Pangborn and sensory. You know, it's just fun to talk sensory, right?
Right. Yes. And well, we can spend a lot of time with this, but I know it's you have your own time. You have your activities, so I don't want to keep you much than the time you accept to share with us. Thank you again. And a ustedes, muchas gracias por ver el video. Si les gustó, denle like. Si no les gustó, no digan nada y compartan. Nos vemos en la siguiente ocasión. Chao. See you. Thanks.